Hey, it's Sally Steele, and welcome to the Sally Steele Rock Show. I have a very special guest today. Now, this guest is one of the most hardest working, in demand musicians in the music business. He has played with everybody. We're talking Ozzy Osbourne, Dio, Blue Oyster Cult. Where's some of his bands? Jeff Tate's Queensryche, just so many. Quiet Riot, of course. And we're very excited to welcome him to my show today. He's really busy, so we're going to talk to him. So please welcome the very amazing and my friend. I'm happy to say he's my friend. Please welcome the amazing Rudy Sarzo.
Hi, Sally. How are you? Always great to see you. I like your outfit. Just for the sake of the people watching this. This is early in the morning. Well, it's 11. Come on, 11 o'clock. I'm like
It's
halfway through the day here.
no. It's early for me. I'm going to just switch to another thing here
Yeah,
so I can see you better. Here we go.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, it's way early for me, Rudy. It's like you're like mornings are good for me. I'm like, what's the latest I could do? Morning, okay, 11. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
up
But
all
you keep Vegas hours, and I get it. I have a lot of bandmates. From Quiet Riot, Jay-Z and Alex. They live in Las Vegas, and it's a whole different world. It's a whole different clock or no clock. I notice it's very hard to find a
yeah,
clock when you're in a casino walking around. Oh, what time is it? I have to drag my iPhone.
yeah. They do that on purpose to so you won't leave the table. But I don't care. It's like I'm editing all night and just working, or I went to party. I do go to parties on the weekends. So it's Monday, and well, here we are. I, I I've done many interviews with you in the past, but this is our first like Zoom chat thing. But
It's a
I was
chat.
talking. Yeah, I was talking to your brother Robert a while back, and he told me a very interesting story about how you and your family escaped from Cuba. Now, you were very young at the time, but what do you remember about that?
Yeah, I mean, scaping. In a sense is a word. Yeah, because the government. Since my dad held a professional job, I mean that he was trained to do his job, running. This is like 60 years ago. So we're talking about old fashioned uh, bobbins. Bobbins is the roll of paper that is used to create magazines and newspapers, especially. But my dad worked at a magazine printing, like the big kind of like Time magazine. It was called Bohemia in Cuba.
Okay.
So that took training. So what was happening is the government, the communist, revolutionary government, Castro's government, was not allowing professionals, people that had technical training, to leave the country because they were hard to replace. It
Mhm.
takes somebody, years to train him at a job like my dad had. So yeah, so
Yeah,
we had
yeah.
to keep it in the lowdown. Family members did not know we were leaving, or it was just like maybe two people knew, and they're the ones who were distant relatives of relatives that were just our friends, and they drove us to the airport. Back in the day, getting on a plane, people wore suits and tie.
Mhm.
It was a thing getting on a plane. Not like today, there will be somebody with like flip flops and shorts sitting next to me on a cross country flight, from LA to New York, but not
Mhm.
60 years ago.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
when I said, yeah, that was the aspect of escaping, because you have to like be secretive about it. We left everything behind. We cannot give any of our belongings to any relative, because that would create suspicion of what was going on, that my family was going to leave the country. This is 1961, right between Bay of Pigs and the missile crises. Very
Okay.
intense time in the history of the Russia, the United States, and Cuba triangle that was going on, the Cold War history.
Right.
And
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
we also had to wait a year and a half to get all the proper paperwork to not only enter the United States but to leave Cuba. To leave Cuba, you have to have your, your passport, your a visa, is somebody claiming you the responsibility from the United States that while you were in the United States, this person was going to be responsible for you. Just like proper immigration, if you're immigrating to another country, you have to go
Mhm.
through these points, and so we came here legally, and then once we arrived, my family. I was very young. I was about to turn 11. My
Yeah.
parents
Yeah.
sought political asylum, so that's another paperwork, and then you have to go through a vetting process and all of that. Back then, I don't know
So,
what it is like now. 60 years later,
well, so not like, so did you leave in the middle of the night? Did Cuba have any inkling that, these guys are trying to escape and get out of here to America, or?
well, the inkling was that my family kept it really low down. Yes, we left the first flight at the crack of dawn. We were on the road, as I remember, and no suitcases. That we had the duffel bags. That 60 years
Mhm.
ago, that was very progressive because I guess
Mhm.
that came from
Mhm.
the army.
Okay.
But people usually travel with suitcases, but we stuff everything in
Mhm.
duffel bags. You
Mhm.
know, as I
Okay.
recall,
Okay.
and
Were you scared?
I'm a kid. I'm a kid, so I knew that we were leaving, and my parents always had the hope that things were going to get resolved within a year or so, and we were going to be able to go back to return to Cuba to our family. But that never happened. So when you're a kid, you sense, especially like I mentioned, I was I was 10 and about 3 or 4 months shy of being 11, and
Uh-huh.
you start growing up very fast. Well, as soon as the revolution came uh, in '59, it, it, I I left behind a lot of innocence. You know, sa- you know, Santa Claus or anything like that. And then my brother wasn't even 6 years old. Uh, when
Okay.
when we arrived in Miami. So he at a very early age he had to be told there's no Santa, there's no all of that, just because my parents could not afford Christmas, especially that first Christmas in
Mhm.
Miami.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So you arrive in Miami and you guys get set up. Now, were you playing music at that time? Did you have an interest in music that early?
uh, I mean, I had an interest. I didn't know I was going to become a professional musician, but I loved music. There was music everywhere I went. It was not. Remember, this is the '50s, and I can't even recall this is before rock and roll. You know,
Hmm.
I grew up with like very early versions of rock and roll. You know, the icons, the pillars of rock and roll, such as Chuck Berry and Little Richard and
Hmm. Hmm.
Fats Domino, uh, Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, all of that. Yeah. But even in the United States, rock and roll in the '50s was treated as a passing phase. That if you watch the Elvis movie, you could see that there was a lot of fear mongering among, especially the politicians and
Hmm.
certain religious groups, about what rock and roll would do to their youth and things like that.
Hmm.
So
Right. Right.
yeah, I'm old enough that I can remember that. I can tell
Hmm.
you, I I
Hmm.
I, I remember that as soon as Castro came to power, uh, any American influence genre of music became outlawed in Cuba,
Oh,
especially
oh,
jazz, even instruments, the saxophone, because it was an American instrument,
oh,
was not
wow.
allowed to be
Oh,
unless it's in a Latin band. But if you had like a rock band with saxophone, like even rock en español, we had rock in Spanish. It was not
Mhm.
allowed. And in jazz, it was not allowed. So that what happened was uh, Latin jazz already had been popularized by artists like Dizzy
Mhm.
Gillespie and Manteca, which was his Latino. I believe he was Cuban percussionist that was playing with him. He could have been Puerto Rican, but I think he was Cuban. And so Latin jazz existed, but as a jazz format, not necessarily as an African Cuban influence, which is what that's that was the pivot point right there. Like if we really
Mhm.
started going using harmony, Latin music harmony within the jazz, then it's not American jazz anymore. It's Latin jazz,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then all the jazz musicians were able to continue to play jazz because now it was more leaning towards the roots of Latin music.
Okay. So you came to I guess you grew up in Florida. Now, how did you you went to LA to pursue your career? I mean, how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, it took a while, but let's say in 61, we arrived in Miami. And by 1963, because of the influx of all the Cubans coming in daily on airplanes legally, legal immigration, uh, there was not enough jobs in Miami. There was really not any major industry in Miami except for import export, like if you work in the docks,
Yeah.
or if entertainment industry, playing for, it was more like a tourist resort
Okay.
type of place, Miami in 1961. And also a snowbird uh,
Hmm.
business, meaning that Miami Beach, there would be people coming from New York during the winter, and they would spend the winter up until, let's say, Passover or Easter, depending on your religion, and then you fly back out again to New York, up north. So that was an industry, but it wasn't that big. I mean, something that I became part of later on, but not initially. So my parents, along with many other families, uh, Cuban families, we were relocated. Relocated meaning that the government, in conjunction with a church, some religious organization, will help you to move from, let's say, Miami to a place of choice. And my parents chose New Jersey because it was close enough that if at some point they were not happy with it, we could always drive down,
Okay.
so we flew to New Jersey because that's basically where my my story really happened, as living in the United States, becoming an American and adapting. Because while I was in Miami, there were enough Latinos in there that and also that was kind of like limbo. We didn't know whether this whole thing was going to end with Castro, and we were going to be able to go back to Cuba again. That was that limbo period. So after 2 years, we figured, what, might take longer, and we cannot make a really a living in Miami. So let's go somewhere else. And that's when my parents chose to go to New Jersey. But going to New Jersey, that was pretty. I mean, we moved to West New York, New Jersey, and this is 1963. And I got to tell you, I was definitely a minority. Latinos were definitely a minority at that time in West New York. It was mainly um, Italians, Irish, very ethnic. It's basically like the same ethnic groups that were found in the city, but this was like kind of like away from the city. So they moved to New Jersey, but it was
Uh-huh.
reflected going on in New York at the time. Yeah. And
Well,
you
how
wanted
did
to tell me what yeah, yeah.
how, why did you just decide to go to LA, or how did that come about? You going to Los
It's a
Angeles?
long story. Okay. So I mean, I had to like give you the background because it just did not happen that I went from Miami to LA. No, I mean
Oh, okay.
it was an evolution of my journey here. So my by see what actually happened, that is it's worth mentioning was that I got there in '63. Right after that, Kennedy got shot. It was miserable. We were all in mourning through the holidays, including Thanksgiving to New Year's. And then
Hmm. Hmm.
February, I think it's 59 years ago, February 9th, I think, the Beatles played
Hmm.
on Ed
Hmm.
Sullivan. Whenever the night the
Okay.
Beatles played on Ed Sullivan. Okay, that changed everything. That changed
Uh,
that changed being accepted. All of a sudden, it didn't matter, you know, because what ethnicity you were, because up until then, all the kids in school, just like they did in their neighborhoods, they hang out together. Italians hung out
mhm,
together,
mhm.
Irish, every Jewish, every single group. And then all of a sudden, it's like music, and we went from combing our hair back to combing it forward.
Okay.
And before you knew it, we were all hanging with each other. We didn't before that, before music.
Oh,
And
okay.
so music changed our whole generation. I mean, you have to really be present to experience that, to realize the impact that it had. And it wasn't just the
Mm,
Beatles, it was the
mm.
British invasion. Because, after
Okay.
the Beatles, it was
Okay.
like, okay, what else is out there? I mean, I'm living in
Mhm,
Jersey. There's
mhm,
no YouTube to find out what's actually going on in the UK right now as far as music goes. And
mhm,
so then all
mhm,
of a sudden, here comes the Rolling Stones. Here comes Day Clock Five and the Animals, and everybody that went
mhm,
through the Ed Sullivan. So now it's part of our culture. It wasn't like a one band did this whole thing. It was the whole movement. They opened the doors and they set the bar, the Beatles, but it was definitely that British invasion, and that changed everything for us. My
mhm.
generation that every day we used to walk to the mailbox, hoping, praying that our draft notice had not arrived yet, because it could
Oh,
arrive
okay.
any day. From high school, that got the draft notice, and before you knew it, they were gone and never came back. So that's
Oh,
that's how
oh.
we lived every single day. It was
Mhm.
like, you got to live this like there's no tomorrow, and I really appreciate it. So
So, so,
eventually, about 3 years later, my parents moved down back to Miami, and by now this is mid '60s, and rock and roll. There's a lot of bars, there's a lot of clubs, and there's a lot of dances to play at, and that's when I started actually playing in a band.
okay.
When I moved to New Jersey, back down to Miami around 1966. Before that, I was just kind of like fiddling around with the instrument, but I didn't have any training. My parents could not afford teachers, music teachers, or anything. So it was basically picking things up by ear. And it wasn't until I really started playing in bands in Miami, actually playing in dances, not just like going to somebody else's home and hanging out and appreciating and listening to music, but an actual band playing
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
playing out. And then after that, that was I did a lot of playing all over the place, all over South Florida. But it wasn't until 1972 that I met Frankie Benelli
Okay.
on my
Okay.
birthday, and we started playing immediately right after that. And then we leave Florida within a year or so, and sporadically I left, and Frankie left, and then we wind up in Chicago. This is 1975, 76. We wind up living in Chicago, playing the whole Midwest circuit. And then by 77, yeah, by 77, we decided and we just packed it up and we headed out to LA. And we lived together trying to make it in the music business. And it took us 10 years since the day we met to actually be in the studio for the first time to record for an album. And that was for the song Thunderbird that went up on the Mental Health record.
So I didn't know that you met Frankie before LA. So you met him in Florida or?
Yeah, Miami. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I thought you met him like out in LA. Okay. So you already knew
No, no.
Frankie and okay. Like, okay. play.
Well,
Okay.
not
Well,
only
cool.
that I know
Well,
him, I
cool.
have been playing with him for years. You know, he was my mentor, rhythm section mentor. You know, and he was way more advanced. When I first saw him play, I saw him play the day before I met him. His band was the last minute replacement to open up for the only Spiders from Mars tour
Wow. No.
that Bowie did. That was 1970 in America. That
Oh,
was
oh,
1972, and one of the last stops was Dania, Florida. Yeah.
uh, uh, wow. Wow. Okay. Now, so you're playing now. Now you were also in LA associated very closely with Randy Rhoads. I mean, how did you meet Randy? And you left Quiet Riot to go play with Randy, right?
Oh no, Quiet no. Uh, Quiet Riot was started by Randy and Kelly when they were in school. Kelly Garney,
Oh.
and
Oh.
then they auditioned singers, and they got Kevin, and then they got Drew somewhere along in there. Drew Forsythe, you know. So that's like
Oh.
that's the first version of Quiet Riot, and then I joined the band in 1978, and then Randy Rhoads left Quiet Riot in 1979 to join Ozzy.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So he wasn't quite right. Okay. Got it. I forgot that. Okay. So
And
so
then
he was
Kevin,
he was
yeah, yeah, and then uh, uh, Quiet Riot ceased to exist from like November of '79 when Randy left to join Ozzy, and then when Kevin played at that time, it was in his band called Dubrow,
okay. Okay.
and it did not become officially Quiet Riot again until I left Ozzy and I rejoined Quiet Riot.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I have news. Just a newsletter because we used to have a fan club. You know,
Uh,
making announcements, and it's right. As a matter of fact, it's part of this keep on rolling book. Mark Weiss that and uh,
oh.
and Missy
Okay.
Whitney
Okay.
wrote, and it's about that period, the Dubrow period, and how it it morphed back into Quiet Riot. As a matter of fact, I was watching an MTV interview from 1983 with Martha Quinn that actually Kevin on camera talks about it, what actually happened. That
Oh, okay.
since I used to be in Quiet Riot, once I rejoined the band, you know, rejoined Kevin and also Frankie and Carlos, who I had never played with before or actually really met him until I did that Thunderbird session. That's when it made sense to call the band Quiet Riot.
Okay. This is like a history lesson, bringing up things I've forgotten about, but that's
It's
great.
been a long
Now,
time.
what do you remember most about Randy Rhoads? Yeah. What do you remember most about Randy Rhoads?
Oh my God, there's so much about. I mean, you know, I wrote a book about it, Off the Rails. You know, so
Hmm.
just to answer that
Hmm.
question, what do I remember the most? I could never walk away satisfied with just giving you a little, little answer. Yada yada yada. Randy Rhoads. You know, I couldn't. I always felt like that there was so much more to share. You know, so I wrote the book. But if I was going to pick one quality that Randy and to me has because he's very much alive in my consciousness, it's
Hmm.
musical integrity. I think that's what really separated Randy the most from anybody I've ever played with. Musical integrity,
Hmm. Hmm.
just because of the plain fact that he was born into a musical family. His mom, his dad, they were music professors. They opened up a music school, which is still open. It's called Musonia.
Oh, okay.
So Randy could read music and play acoustic guitar, you know, classical, before he was in a rock band. He didn't get it into
Okay.
it because, you know, he got in. It was the family business, basically. and also the
Mm-hmm.
family art, and even his mom really, she was the first female trumpet player in the marching band, and I believe she was like first trumpeter, the
Mm-hmm.
first woman to actually achieve this. So these, they're very devoted to music. And Mrs. Rhodes, his mom, she taught up until, right before she passed away. And that's where the heart and soul was, or is. I mean, every time I go to Musonia, there's so many memories about my time in there, and how much that's what I really learned. That's the place where I really get to know Randy Rhoads. I learned about him. And then, of course, once we started touring together with Ozzy, that was a whole different level of Randy that I was experiencing and learning even more about him. Musical integrity to his last day.
He he seemed like such a sweet person. Is it true that he was afraid of to fly?
Yeah, he was not a big fan of flying, but what happened, as we travel around the world, he had to fly. I mean, how else was he going to get to England to play with Ozzy, or then on the road? I mean, it
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
necessity. It was a necessity. You have to do this. So he overcame the fear of flying little by little, just from being out there touring. But yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, from what I'm told, what I was told, it was that the first time Randy ever got on a plane, because up until then he was taking trains to travel. I was
Mm-hmm.
told this was with to go and join Ozzy in England.
Oh, okay. Where were you when you heard that, the small plane crashed with him on it?
I okay. Uh, I was asleep in the bunk of the bus that was hit by the plane. The bus crashed into the plane, and then it kept going, and then a crash landed into the garage of the house that the bus was parked next to, and it exploded. And I woke up with the boom of the plane hitting the bus.
Oh
I
wow.
had no
Oh
idea what it
wow.
was, where I was, because when the opening of my book is the last words I have with Randy, which is he's trying to talk me into joining him on the trip on the plane, and I passed on it, and I close my curtains and go back to sleep, and the next thing
Hmm.
I experience is the plane hitting the bus.
Wow. Why didn't you want to go with him?
Oh, very simple. I grew up in Florida, and I did not need to get up on a plane to see the where I used to live, the place that I actually escaped from, the place that I was like, okay, I gotta get out of here. If I ever really want to be a recording artist, I can't. It ain't gonna happen if I stay in Miami. So so it was like I wasn't really curious to get up on a plane. I was just, I just wanted to get to the hotel, which is we had made a pit stop between our on the way to the hotel. We stopped at this. Uh, the house was next to a landing strip in a community in Florida that is famous for airplanes, pilots to live there and fly their airplanes and keep them in their backyard. Like that's where John Travolta lives, and he parks his planes there, and
Okay.
other people
Okay.
that do that, and so there was a hangar with this Cessna that the bus driver piloted and caused the crash. Uh, so it was that kind of a setting. So it was very
So he wasn't going on tour. He wasn't. He was. Yeah, he wasn't traveling to a gig. He was just. They were just taking a scenic tour. Is that what you're saying?
well, yeah, if you want to call it that. There had been a another another flight uh, before Randy and Rachel. Rachel is the wardrobe lady, Sharon's assistant that was traveling with us. And
Mm-hmm.
so on the first go around, it was Don Airy, keyboard player, now plays with Deep Purple, but he was our
Mm-hmm.
keyboard player back in the Diary of a Madman tour, and our tour manager Jake Duncan.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they went on the first round, and then on the second round, uh, it was very innocent. The pilot told the tour manager, "Listen, I am aware that Rachel has a heart condition, so I'm going to take it easy. I'm not going to do any stunts or anything." And then Randy heard that, and he said, "Well, in that case, I want to come," and that was
Oh.
his decision. You know.
Hmm. Well, we're so glad that you wanted to just stay on the bus and go back to sleep. So happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, after something like that, you go, we all went through survival guilt, you know,
Mm-hmm.
from everybody, Ozzy, Sharon. I gotta tell you, Sharon really kept. She was the backbone because everybody just fell apart, and she was the backbone that
Mm-hmm.
held the whole thing together. I'm sure that in private it was a whole different story, just like our story, but she really kept everybody, you know, uh, from losing our minds, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, so after that, I guess the band just kind of everybody went their separate ways. Is it true that Ozzy Osbourne punched you in the face at the US Festival, or
Okay,
is that a
uh, I got to rewind your question here. Okay,
okay?
no, we
Okay.
we we didn't go our separate ways because there was a tour that we had to finish.
Oh, okay.
So we 10 days after the crash, we continue. So which means in that 10 day from the crash to the time that we continue, we spend time going to services for Rachel and also for Randy.
Mm-hmm.
We were uh, Tommy, Ozzy, Kevin, myself. We were pallbearers as we you know for Randy's casket.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we were also auditioning musicians and rehearsing with them so we could continue the tour. The idea was to keep Ozzy occupied, otherwise he was going to, Will believe that he would have drank himself to death. You know, uh,
Okay. Okay.
and the punching thing. No, you know what? We were the first band on. We were a last minute addition at the US Festival.
Okay.
We had to fly right back out to where the next gig was the next day. We didn't see anybody. We went on at noon and we were out of there as soon as we finished playing. So I didn't see Ozzy. I didn't see nothing. We did see Van Halen on the way to. They were coming in from the night before, and we were leaving like at 10 o'clock in the morning to go to the
Mm-hmm.
site. And because we didn't have helicopter uh, privileges, like everybody was being helicopter into the gig because we were nobody. So we
Yeah.
were in a van, stuck in traffic, in a van that was supplied by the promoter to take us backstage. So
Okay. So that's a lie. Ozzy didn't punch you in the face because he was mad at you or anything.
not at the US
That's just
Festival.
that's
I
oh,
mean,
that wasn't
there was not there was nothing to be mad about. What was there to be?
oh.
This
I
happened like I
I
I
heard
was
it
in
was
the
I heard it
van,
was a
and
rumor.
then hmm,
I just heard it was a rumor. So I heard that it was, I guess that was just a rumor that he punched you in the face. So that was at another show, not the S Festival.
That was later on. I wrote about it in the book. It's in one of the final chapters. What happened? And it happened in Kalamazoo, Michigan, in 1984.
Why did
Not
he,
at the
why was he
gig,
mad?
at a hotel.
Oh,
Well, he was
oh,
drunk to begin
okay.
with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Surprise! We love you, Ozzy. Um, so he just got mad, and then did you quit the band after that because he hit you?
Which band?
Well, I don't know where it happened. You said it was in a hotel that
Well,
he
see,
punched.
yeah, yeah, and I also said 1984, which means that I left Ozzy in 1982. I was a member of Choir Riot.
Yeah, yeah. But he was mad at you because you left his band. Is that why you did
No,
it?
I tell you, because see, by me answering the question, I gotta drag other people in to the answer that I'd rather not. But since you keep insisting on it, I want to tell you,
Oh,
we're friends. We're
no,
having a
no.
conversation here. Okay, okay. Well, what happened was that Kevin started saying things that Ozzy wasn't very happy about. Kevin DeBrow. In
Mm,
1983, Kevin was very well known for being outspoken, and he said certain things regarding Ozzy that Ozzy was not very keen on. So Ozzy, this is the first time that as a matter of fact, I was not at the hotel to see him. I was at the hotel to see everybody else. He happened to be
mm,
wandering around the lobby, and he just comes to me and hits me just for being a member of Choir Riot.
okay, okay. Well, I mean, that's kind of like the way Ozzy lived back then, just drinking, partying, wandering around the lobby. So, okay, I just want to clear that up. I saw that online. So, thank you for clearing that up. Now,
Sure, my pleasure.
at what point, at what point in your career did you feel like, hey, I finally made it? And what band was that you were in that you felt like you were really finally made it successful in the music business?
Yeah, that is a really good question because I mean, there's two sides. I mean, to really say I made it, you cannot really claim that. I cannot claim that based on I just happen to like come in after the groundwork has been laid, such as when I joined Ozzy. You know, uh, I was not part of the writing and recording of those records, Blizzard and Diary. So that is something that really belongs to Randy's legacy. I was part of that band, but I was not an architect of the band.
Okay.
So the one that I can really claim that would be Quiet Riot, being there since 1978. And the fact that the band became Quiet Riot after once I rejoined Kevin again, then it becomes Quiet Riot. You know,
Okay. Okay. What was your first big splurge when you felt rich and famous?
oh no, it wasn't a matter of rich and famous. It's a matter of I don't have a car. So if I'm gonna get a car after going number one with mental health, I'm gonna buy the car of my dreams, which I did. At the time, it was a brand new Corvette, 1984. I had my wife, my fiance, my wife to be, was my wife now, still after 38 years of marriage. She picked it out.
Congratulations.
Yeah, Rebecca. She picked it out. She went to the dealership and she picked out the car and she had a waiting for me because I was on the road. That period we were really, really busy. We're constantly touring. 1983, 84. Yeah.
Do
So
you,
that
do
was
you,
my big
do you,
splurge.
do you, do you still have the car?
Oh no, he was stolen at gunpoint in 1985.
What color was it? Just curious. What color was the
Red,
Corvette? Oh, of
red.
course. Little red Corvette. That's cool. Now,
which I bought. Yeah, which I bought before. Little Red Corvette. Yeah.
Yeah, way before that. Now, I asked you about Randy. What do you remember most about Kevin?
Tenacity, tenacity. We had two very strong. Uh, Trying to find the right word, but foundations to the band that I learned about. What amount of musical uh, credibility you have to have. Integrity to make it at a certain level, and I'm talking about Randy Rhoads level. And also the tenacity to never give up
Mm-hmm.
that Kevin had, that just kept going. Okay, he was not taking no for an answer. I mean, and I did too. I mean, when I got to LA, I was sleeping on the floor right before I joined Ozzy. So yeah, you have to burn the ship. There's no turning back if you really want to succeed at anything. Just have to be forging ahead, learning, getting better at it, and sooner or later it will happen.
You just said that, and it reminded me of the really nice quote you gave me for my CD coming that just came out on Cleopatra Records. Your quotes on the liner. You said, Sally's an example of you achieve something. An example that somebody who never gives up. So, thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, yeah,
Getting
yeah. And you live in Vegas. How many people have you seen that give up on playing at a table or playing at a slot machine, and right when they get up from that chair, somebody takes that same spot, they hit jackpot.
Well, I don't gamble for that reason. I don't want to be haunted by something like that. Like, well, I should have picked that up when I won the lottery. I don't gamble. My career has been a gamble. It goes into the magazine, to the award shows. And by the way, thank you so much for coming to 3 of my award shows. Now you're going to come to the next one, right?
When is it?
Well,
If I'm not touring, yeah.
yeah, I'm going to ask you. I want Robert to come too, and I really appreciate you coming. You've done so great on all those. Now, just a couple quick questions here. Now, be honest. In all the bands you played with, like White Snake, Blue Oyster Cult, Ozzy, Quiet Riot, what band would you say that you most enjoyed the people and the music that you played with?
Uh, I really enjoy them all. You know, it's out to be like you asked me, and I've been honest from the hello that we had at the beginning of the conversation. Um, God, that's and they'll have different reasons, different bands, different reasons. I mean, I cannot. My God, I to be in the company of Ronnie James Dio.
Mm,
It's a once in there's only one running Ronnie James Dio, only one,
yeah.
and I know I will never have that experience again because he's no longer with us.
I
And it
don't.
was like when you're in
I
his company, yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but that's the first time I met you was at NAM, and there wasn't hardly anybody around. It was you and Simon Wright and Randy and everybody, Randy, Ronnie, and I'm just this annoying person. Like, let me get a picture. Let me get a picture. And I remember you weren't too thrilled. It's like, when is this chick going to stop pestering us? So that's the first time I ever met you was annoying you. I don't know if you remember that, but anyway.
And you haven't changed a bit. You haven't
I
changed a bit, which is
I
wonderful.
names, but yeah, there was somebody in the email she didn't delete it. It's like, yeah, I'll do the interview, but she's really annoying. I can't help it. It's my nature. Sorry, baby. Um, now, now I thought for sure when I asked you that question before that you would say that Quiet Riot. Now you're back with Quiet Riot. You guys are touring. Alex is in the band, and who's in the band now, and where you're touring all over. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was wonderful to actually be not only to be asked by Frankie to come back, but also to know that every single member of that band has been picked up and mentored by a previous member, such as Kevin and Frankie. You know, Alex was picked by Kevin, groomed by Kevin in all things Quiet Riot because things were different, and it's so I mean, for me to walk into the band, I know the schematic of what makes the band work, and the people behind it, and the personalities, and the reason why things were the way they were from being there since 1978 when I
Mm-hmm.
first joined the band.
Mm-hmm.
And then the transition from Quiet Riot to Dubrow. I played in Dubrow. I was living with Kevin. I
Mm-hmm.
played in Dubrow right up the day that I joined Ozzy, and then I come back and it's Quiet Riot again. And
Yeah.
so I know that it's like it's difference between driving a car and being a mechanic that
Mm-hmm.
actually knows all the pieces how they have to work in order to be efficient. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I am both. I'm one of the drivers and I'm one of the mechanics of that car. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and and to and so it's really great to walking into a situation that there has been one guitar player for the last 20 years, Alex,
Right.
picked and groomed by Kevin, you know, and
Yeah.
so that's solid. Then you got Jizzy Pearl that was picked by Frankie,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I know this is the fact that Kevin was a huge Love Hate fan, and
Mm-hmm.
really respected Jizzy, and Jizzy comes from the same Sunset Strip that Quiet Riot comes from. Next
Mm-hmm.
generation, but still it's the same place. We all walk down those sidewalks, and as starving musicians or guys with record deals or whatever. So we know that. We get it. We get each other. And we
I
talk about it.
I I
There's a lot of
I
communication in this band, you know. And the next one is
I
Johnny Kelly. That was actually picked by Frankie uh,
mm-hmm.
to to take over while he was going through chemo because Frankie never gave up. We
Oh,
never gave up on him. Frankie never gave up
yeah.
on himself. So I walk into a band that has been uh, baptized, agreed on, mentored
Mm-hmm.
by the previous members in the group.
I remember when Alex first joined the band and you guys played this little club here in Vegas. It was called the Tailspin. And Alex was upstairs in the dressing room. I'll never forget, Kevin went leaping up the stairs like, he had those long legs. He's going like, 10 3 at a time, like, Alex, come on down here. He's trying to get Alex there. But anyway, I don't know if you remember that, playing that, but um, I had one more question now. I
I
had one
wasn't in
more
the band at
question
the
now.
time. Yeah.
Oh, you were, yeah, because I don't remember seeing you that night. That was 20 years ago. I can't remember. But um, my last question, you've been very honest with me. I don't know if you're going to answer this question. Being the annoying person I am, I'm going to ask you. I interviewed Kevin before he died, a few times, and he was very upset with you. He was mad at you. What was that all about? Why was that?
You can ask because I've asked the same question to many people who were really close to him, Glenn Hughes, Frankie, even Alex. No idea, no
Really?
idea.
Wow.
But yeah, no idea, no idea. But that's not the Kevin that I choose to remember.
Mm.
Just watch. It's on Facebook. I'm going to send you the link. Watch the MTV 1983 interview with Martha Quinn. This just the voice of just him and I and Martha Quinn, and the record had just gone gold, so it was kind of like early. We're kind of like have a momentum, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Kevin that I know. That's the Kevin I live with, and that's the Kevin that I share so many wonderful memories. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if
Yeah. Send me
somebody
that
ever,
link.
yeah, and if somebody ever tells you, um, oh, I know exactly because Kevin told me. No, I'll have not. Just, I mean, if you ever hear of somebody, let me know because I'm curious.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you're the most like.
his closest friends, band members, no idea.
Wow. We'll always wonder. I should have asked you when he said that.
It has no effect on my appreciation, respect, and love that I have for Kevin as I have for Frankie and Randy at all. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I should have asked him, but like, well, why are you mad at him? But I didn't, because he was like so intense. But
of all the questions that you asked, you didn't ask that one.
Kevin's intimidating. You got this big guy, and he goes, "I'll tell you what," and he's like, kind of above me. He's like, "And I'll tell you what I think about him," and it's like, okay, I'm like in the dressing room, like, okay, and I was just recording everything. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I wasn't on my game, quite as annoying as I am now, but I can't thank you enough for this rock and roll history lesson that I did not know. I didn't read your book, I guess, but uh, I really appreciate you, Rudy. And who couldn't like you? Love you. That's why you work all the time because everybody loves you. And everybody I talk to, when I post a picture of you, I put a picture of you and me up a couple years back, and it got all these likes. Not because of me, because they love you. So I can't see how anybody could ever be mad at you. And I am so happy for your success, and you're out there keeping rock and roll alive, and that means a lot to me and all your fans. And do you want to say anything else to your fans that they may not know or you want them to know?
Well, I want them to tune in and watch more of your shows with different guests. Who do you have coming up?
I don't know yet. I interviewed Bruce Kulick last week. I'm just waiting for some people. Yeah, I mean, I used to, as I was always going out to the rock shows. I'm waiting to interview people, and it's just like, I'm going to do this, in between those crazy adventures when I go out. But do some more, Zoom type interviews. But you're one of my first guests on the Zoom portion, so I really appreciate you taking the time, and I can't wait to see you. I'll be seeing you soon. Are you coming to Vegas soon? Are you coming
I'll
to
see you
Vegas
soon.
soon? Yeah. Okay.
I haven't checked my schedule lately, but yeah, that's like a must to play in Vegas at least once a year.
Okay. Great. Great. I can't wait to see you. And we'll see you at my next award show. I'm going to try to get your schedule in between your busy tour dates to come out and see us here in
You
Vegas.
got it. You
Okay.
got it. We'll see
Thank
you
you.
there. God bless. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, Rudy.
Bye bye, Sally.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you right here next week. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you on the streets of rock and roll.